Okay, what is that company? Dakota Access Pipeline, are they here? Let's take 5. They're supposed to be here at 11. Let's take 5, and then I'll see if they're here, and then we'll hear the presentation. Unless if they're not here, then I'll ask Wash to come up and give us a update on it. Okay, we'll come back in 5. Got a quorum? Okay, we got a quorum. Hi, Tammy. I want to. We'll just go around and give an introduction. Let the tribal council introduce themselves, and you can introduce yourself. Thank you for coming today. I know that in the past, whenever there's projects like this, companies never came to the tribe and informed them of proposed activities. So I think we welcome you here today. With that, I'll just go around. My name is Dave Archambault. I'm the tribal chairman, and we'll start from my right. We'll go around this way to introduce the tribal council members who are here today.
My name's Randall White. I'm councilman at large, and I come from the community of Porcupine, North Dakota.
I'm Minnie Techiawi, woman who loves the water. My name is Phyllis Young. I'm a tribal council member at large. My home community is here in Long Soldier, and I represent the entire reservation. Welcome.
Cody Two Bears, district representative from the Cannonball District.
My name is Joe Dunn. I'm the council rep for Long Soldier District.
Good morning. My name is Adele White. I'm the tribal secretary from Porcupine, but I'm originally from Kennel, South Dakota, so I represent 2 states. Just kidding. No, we shared one.
Ben Harrison, tribal council rep from Porcupine. Welcome.
Ron Bronner, councilman at large, Bullhead, South Dakota.
Dwayne Claymore, represent the Wapala District, South Dakota.
Hello, my name is Ada Stidligo, councilwoman at large.
Joe White Mountain, councilman for the Bear Soldier District in McLaughlin, South Dakota.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There's a button on your mic. You just push it, and there's a green light that should come on.
There we go. Does that work? Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. I am Tammy Ibach with Dakota Access Pipeline, and with me today I have Chuck Fry and Joe Malucci. You all were so kind as to state where you're from, so I'm going to tell you where I'm from. I grew up across the river in Linton, so not too far from here. You can almost see it across the river. So thank you again for allowing us to be here. We did provide lunch. It's in Arlene's office. However you want to handle that is fine with us. If you want to have it while we're meeting or if you're going to have it later, it's up to you. Dakota Access Pipeline is a pipeline project that is originating out of the Bakken area with the gathering system put in place starting at Stanley, moving over to Tioga around near Williston, down to Trenton, Watford City, and then into Johnson's Corner, coming down through Dunn County, Mercer County, Morton County, crossing over the river into Emmons County, going down into South Dakota, crossing into Iowa, and ending in Illinois. And this project is geared to take, at the minimal, about 320,000 barrels of crude oil out of North Dakota into Illinois. And what it will do at the end of the day is eliminate a lot of railroad traffic in North Dakota, which you have all been widely versed on the pressure that the Bakken has put on rail traffic in North Dakota. I'm going to turn it over to Chuck Fry, and he will walk through the project in more detail. But as you're aware, the project is going to cross over north of Cannonball within about 1,500 feet of tribal reservation land. So we're here today to answer questions that you might have, put out any fires or rumors that you may have heard, because this project has gotten some media coverage, and I know that one of the representatives from Standing Rock has contacted the parent company, Energy Transfer Partners, who owns Dakota Access Pipeline, with some environmental questions already. So we're here to detail the project and to answer questions.
And just before you get started on the project, I want you to know and understand that we recognize our treaty boundaries, the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1851 and 1868, which encompasses North Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota. Because of that, we oppose of a pipeline. We have a standing resolution that was passed in 2012 that opposes any pipeline within the treaty boundary. So just so you know, coming in, this is something that the tribe is not supporting. This is something that the tribe does not wish, even though it's outside of our federal 1889 federal boundaries. We still recognize the treaty boundaries. So you could give the presentation, and then what I'll do is I'll ask our Tribal Historic Preservation Office to help remind your company of the federal laws that exist with Section 106. And then I'll ask council to provide any input or insight. But if you want to go ahead and continue with the presentation of the project, and then we'll ask Tribal Historic Preservation to remind us of the federal laws that exist, and then I'll open up to Tribal Council to ask you any questions or any comments.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. As Tammy said, I'm Chuck Fry and work for Energy Transfer, and want to thank y'all for giving us the opportunity to come and explain our project and answer any questions you might have. The first item in the presentation is a legal disclaimer that just says
Pull the mic closer.
Oh, sorry. The first item is a legal disclaimer just saying these are forward-looking events and some things could change. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of the Energy Transfer family. There are 4 companies in the Energy Transfer family. Energy Transfer Equity is the parent company. They're located in Dallas. They own the general partnership units for the other entities, which consist of Energy Transfer Partners, which is headquartered in San Antonio, and that is the company that owns Dakota Access Pipeline and will be constructing Dakota Access Pipeline. There's another affiliated company, Regency Energy Partners, that's also located in Dallas, engaged in midstream activities. And then finally, Sunoco Logistics, which is in Pennsylvania. And between all these companies, we have about 71,000 miles of pipeline, have a long history of operating pipelines, and believe we do so safely. Some other information, again, we have about 47 million barrels of storage. We operate 2 fractionators. We have a large crude oil terminal on the Gulf Coast where crude oil is imported and distributed to refineries in the U.S. On page 5, there's an asset map. You can see the majority of our assets are in Texas, which is where the company started. We don't have a presence in the Dakotas yet. Building this pipeline will give us our first activity in the Dakotas in Iowa. We're going to connect the line down into Illinois. It's going to connect to an existing pipeline that's currently in natural gas service that's going to be converted to crude oil service. And that would be one of those yellow lines kind of in the middle of Illinois that runs south and southwest down to the Gulf Coast. We're going to be constructing about 346 miles of pipe in North Dakota. That'll vary from 12-inch to 30-inch. As Tammy mentioned, we start in Stanley and we make kind of a big loop around the lake and pick up the different production areas in North Dakota where the current drilling activity is taking place. Johnson's Corner is the last gathering point, and there's where we start the line kind of at a diagonal to the southeast, running through North Dakota, Again, about 346 miles in North Dakota, 267 miles in South Dakota. We will have 6 gathering terminals, tank farms in North Dakota, one near Stanley, one near Tioga, one near Epping, one near Trenton, one near Watford City, and one near Johnson's Corner. We will be filing a certificate with the Public Service Commission of North Dakota sometime toward the end of December this year. On page 7, there's a project map that shows the route all the way down to the middle of Illinois. The 6 stars in the northwest corner of North Dakota are the gathering terminal locations. On page 8, there's a larger scale map of North Dakota. Again, shows the locations of the gathering facilities and gives a little better approximate location of them. You can see the counties that we'll traverse. As Tammy said, we've got binding commitments from shippers for a minimum of 320,000 barrels a day of Bakken crude oil. This will all be oil that's produced in North Dakota, currently being moved primarily by rail, and this pipeline will give the producers an alternative means of moving product. We believe it's a more energy efficient and safer way to transport crude oil long distances. Page 10 gives the mileage in each county. Again, about 346 miles in North Dakota, starting in Montreal County through Williams, McKenzie, Dunn, Mercer, Morton, and Emmons County. We're having public meetings in North Dakota this week, as well as meeting with your tribe and the 3 affiliated tribes in order to explain our project and answer any questions that y'all have about the project. The total cost for the project we estimate to be about $3.74 billion. North Dakota would be about just a little over $1 billion, and the same thing in South Dakota, approximately $1 billion. Construction jobs anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000. North Dakota 2,000 to 4,000. South Dakota 2,000 to 4,000 construction jobs. Overall, there'll be about 40 full-time jobs created. We expect 10 to 15 of them to be in North Dakota and 10 to 15 of them to be in South Dakota. We have not finalized where we're going to set up operating offices yet. The ad valorem tax for North Dakota is estimated to be almost $13.5 million a year after the pipeline is placed in service. In South Dakota, it'll be about $12.3 million a year, again, after the pipeline is placed in service. That would be the end of 2016 or early 2017. We have done a lot of routing work with the pipeline, working with all the databases that are available out there that show environmentally sensitive areas, known cultural artifact areas, federal lands, tribal lands, and as Tammy mentioned, we have avoided the existing tribal boundary property, and we actually come within 2,500 feet. 2,500 feet is the closest we come to your current tribal boundary. We are in the process of acquiring survey permissions and performing survey work, and also cultural work and environmental work, threatened and endangered species surveys. And so people are out on the ground as we get the surveys done and walking the route and looking for sensitive areas. only pump stations that'll be constructed in North Dakota will be at the terminals. So other than the terminal locations, there will only be pipeline and valve sites. The valve sites will be placed in areas around waterways to protect the waterways, also to protect high consequence areas that are environmentally sensitive or have other maybe wells, things that would be of more consequence if there were any incident on the pipeline. As I said, we're having meetings right now. We expect to file our application before the end of this year. We expect to be ready to start construction early in 2016. And we expect to be finished with construction at the end of 2016. In summary, this pipeline is moving Bakken crude oil only, completely North Dakota domestically produced crude oil, taking it to refineries in the Midwest and on the Gulf Coast. It provides short-term economic benefits from construction activity, construction jobs that'll take place, and then there will be the long-term impact of the taxes and the full-time jobs that'll be created by the pipeline, and it will enhance the ability of the Bakken producers to move crude oil out of the region in a more energy efficient and safer manner. And that's in brief our project, and so
Okay.
Any questions?
What I want to do is I want to ask Wash Davey if you could come up to sit at Jay's mic. And I don't know if Terry wants to ask any questions also, but maybe I want Wash Davey to come up and just remind us of the federal law that exists. And then I'll ask council if they have any comments or questions for you. Go ahead, Wash.
Good morning. Thank you guys for coming. I said I wasn't going to say and that was my first word. My name is Washdewi Young, and I'm the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. I deal with the National Historic Preservation Act, and we also work with the National Environmental Policy Act. And I typed up some comments that I think are important for you guys, for us to convey to you our position and why we have the position that we do. Our understanding was there was going to be an individual from the Army Corps here with you guys. Is there anybody?
No, there's not anyone with the Army Corps of Engineers. We have been having meetings with them, but they're not coming to our informational meetings.
Okay. It's our understanding that the Army Corps of Engineers will be the lead federal agency on this project. Is that correct?
I don't know if they're the lead federal agency. I know we're working with them on permitting.
On permitting?
Yes.
Permitting for?
Permitting for waterway crossings and other Corps property.
Okay. There are critical issues within the NHPA and the NEPA processes that the Army Corps repeatedly overlooks on projects where the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe has consulted on. One such concern would be the segmenting of the routes under the National Environmental Policy Act in order to streamline the permitting process. On June 6th of this year, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit ruled in the Delaware River Keeper versus the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission case that a continuous pipeline project cannot be segmented into multiple parts to avoid a comprehensive NEPA review. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers did the same thing to streamline permitting for both the southern leg of TransCanada's Keystone XL and Enbridge's Flanagan South pipelines. Delaware Riverkeeper versus FERC dealt with breaking up a new 40-mile-long pipeline upgrade into 4 segments. For the other 2 cases, the Army Corps of Engineers shape-shifted the 2 projects, both which were hundreds of miles long, into thousands of single complete projects for permitting purposes. The Corps, when it comes to working with tribes, especially the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, their modus operandi is to streamline the process using the nationwide permit 12 to complete smaller segments for environmental analysis, or the 404 permit, which says their agency is only responsible to consult on their jurisdictional boundaries where the project crosses a waterway of the United States of America. This is unacceptable, and as the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit ruled this year to that effect, this exact scenario unfolded within the last 3 years on the Bakken pipeline and the Baker Lateral pipeline, where the concerns of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe went unanswered while construction commenced on both pipelines. And in the case of the Baker Lateral, the pipeline became fully operational while the Standing Rock Sioux Tribal THPO office, we were waiting on a meeting that the Corps had promised to set up. And in that meantime, the pipeline, Baker Lateral, became fully operational, and we were notified 2 weeks after that had happened. My question for you guys is, have any permits been applied for by Energy Transfer or their subsidiaries to the Army Corps of Engineers?
The permitting process is underway. I don't know if any of the applications have been formally filed. The information is being gathered with which to file the permits.
Okay, thank you. For this particular project, it is our understanding that the Corps will be the lead agency, yet when we contacted the regulatory office for the Army Corps in Omaha, they have been saying that there was no permit issued. However, in talking to another Corps office in South Dakota, they made it clear to us that the Army Corps is trying to figure out what permit they will utilize for this project, either the nationwide permit 12 or the 404 permit. And we believe that this may be an intentional strategy behind the door part on their part because of the recent Delaware case, the Riverkeeper case. We've been actually having a hard time setting up a meeting with the Corps for this particular project, so we do appreciate that you guys came here to answer some of our questions and let you guys know the concerns that we do have. We believe that the Army Corps knows full well the process that they're using and relying on is outdated, and it's based on regulations that were passed in 1983. And if you want, you can write this down. It's 33 CFR 325 Appendix C. It was passed a full 9 years before the 1992 amendments to the NHPA that were passed created what is referred to as the Section 106 process. This law was a game changer for tribes and tribal historic preservation nationwide because it allowed for Section 106 of the NHPA allowed for tribes to consult on undertakings and to participate in the identification of historic properties that are significant to them. And basically there's 4 steps to that under the Section 106 process. There's the identification of historic properties, and then there is the right for the tribe to help nominate these to the National Register of Historic Places and then resolve any adverse effects to those. At no time on any project that the Standing Rock Sioux tribe consulted on in the last 3 years with the Army Corps were we allowed to participate in identification, which is the first step under the NHPA. So that's very problematic if the Corps is going to be the lead federal agency for this project. And under NHPA, Section 101 D6B says that regardless of land status, the Indian tribe has the right to ascribe significance to a place that was significant to our culture and our ways, our prayers and practices. So regardless of land status, I know that there is an existing natural gas pipeline near the Cannonball, north of Cannonball, that crosses, and you guys may be utilizing that right away, but that also is an area that is important to us. It's important that the land and the waters that we're talking about is not taken out of context. We have a really rich history here, and our history and ceremonies are who we are. There are 66 village sites along the Missouri River within the boundaries of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. The northern border of the Standing Rock Sioux Indian Reservation is north of Cannonball, North Dakota, and the southern border ends near Mobridge, South Dakota. These lands were also home to the Arikara, Mandan, Hidatsa, and Cheyenne. The proposed Dakota Access Pipeline would cross the Missouri directly underneath a village site. There is an island that gets exposed when the Oahe Reservoir levels drop. This island is part of a larger village that is presently inundated. There are human remains, artifacts, pottery shards, tools throughout this entire channel. Across the Missouri River on the eastern shoreline were Dakota camps, including Chief Two Bears and Little Soldiers Yanktonay camps. This crossing is near what was called Mini Horsehead Bottoms. It's where the Dakota escaped General Sibley and Sully in 1863 after the massacre at Whitestone Hill. Chief Big Head's family crossed the water here. When night fell, the babies were crying, and the young girls carried them across the river. They plugged their nose so they wouldn't be heard crying. They swam across the Missouri River with those babies. This is a story that many of us do not know, but it's an important part of our story that needs to be put out there. And I actually struggled with this last night, is do we want to tell something that's so important and sacred to us to a pipeline company? But it's important for you guys to know the history and our connection to this area. Today, Chief Big Head's descendants are in the room, Chief Little Soldiers, and as well as many of the descendants of a lot of other chiefs. And for us to, officially endorse or accept a proposal that would negatively impact our cultural sites, our prayer sites, our duties and responsibilities as stewards of the land, it would be unacceptable and goes against the very intent of our office in fighting and protecting and preserving what we have here, what we have left for our people and our children. And I thank you guys for coming, but the risks are too great for our children. And thank you.
Terry, do you have anything you want to add? Can you push the button?
There we go. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. On page 5 of your energy transfer asset overview, I noticed Southern Union Pipeline isn't listed as one of the assets for energy transfer, even though that was bought about a month before Sunoco was bought by Energy Transfer.
Yes, Southern Union is not listed as an entity. The pipelines that Southern Union owned are, and that would be Trunkline Gas, Trunkline LNG, Suggs, Sea Robin Pipeline, Panhandle Eastern Pipeline. Those were what made up Southern Union.
Thank you. Additionally, not listed as assets on here are the 5,000 gas stations that Sunoco owns.
That is correct. That's set up in a different holding company now. I'm not sure why it's I think it's Strauser. I'm sorry, I'm not real familiar with the retail gas station operations, but it is in the family. It's not part of it. It's being moved out of Energy Transfer Partners into a different company.
Okay, thank you. Some other questions. Are there any additional pipelines in association with this Dakota Access owned by or proposed by Energy Transfer? And be aware, I do my research. So
there is Dakota Access Pipeline itself runs to Patoka in Illinois, and at that point it connects to what we're calling Energy Transfer Crude Oil Pipeline, and that runs down to Nederland, Texas, which is right by Beaumont. And so those two pipelines are going to connect to each other in Illinois. There are no other pipelines planned in North Dakota right now by us. Again, we have the terminaling locations, and the producers right now are responsible for bringing pipe or connections or crude oil to the terminals that we put in place.
I kind of wish that one of the Army Corps representatives, as we had heard, was supposed to be coming down, was here, because I'd be questioning him right now on whether or not those should be an interconnected action under NEPA. And that's something you guys might want to get addressed, because you are intending to ship this down to the Gulf Coast as well. Your end point isn't Pacoda. You do intend to also produce this to go down to the Gulf Coast.
It will connect and deliver into that line. Some of the product will be delivered in Patoka to, there's an interconnecting pipeline hub at Patoka, and so some of the shippers will deliver their product at Patoka for delivery into other third-party pipelines.
Thank you.
I'd like to address the question about the Army Corps of Engineers. In setting up this meeting for today, it was never communicated in my first original email to Chairman Archambault and to Arlene that there would be a representative from the Army Corps of Engineers. So where that commentary has come from is outside of the original meeting request. So I just want that to be noted. Thank you.
Our information at the THPO that we have from individuals within the Army Corps was that there would be a representative down here. So that was what we were told. That's why we had anticipated someone being here. So,
is there anyone sitting behind us that wants to be identified as with the Army Corps of Engineers?
I don't see anyone sitting here that would be Army Corps. So
Doug is the closest thing. No.
Going on to page 6 of your presentation, the project is being initially designed for a capacity of 320,000 barrels per day. What is your anticipated BPD? Is it the 540 that you're looking at?
Yes, the 570, the line is expandable to that with some addition of horsepower and the utilization of drag reducing agent.
Going on to page 9, Dakota Access LLC has secured long-term binding contractual commitments for up to 320, and then there's the mention of the 570,000. When was this accomplished in terms of your open binding season? I realize it was in March that your open binding season, and then you expanded it again in September. In fact, started it within this week, I think.
That's correct. We had our initial open season in the first quarter of this year, and that's where we got the initial commitments. The 320,000 does include 10% what's called walk-up capacity, so that being a common carrier, that producers that haven't contracted to ship on the pipeline would still have an opportunity to move volume on the pipeline, and so that's in there. Then we, as you mentioned, there was a public announcement that we're having a secondary open season that just started to try and obtain additional throughput commitments from shippers. We did obtain one, that or actually two, that we made an announcement about with the announcement of the additional open season.
I'm a little curious about this because the Koch brothers had introduced the Dakota Express, which was canceled in January of this year, and it pretty much followed the same route and was intending to connect to your secondary pipeline going from Pacoda south. So I'm a little bit curious on how you guys managed to obtain the shipper commitments, and Koch brothers, who have huge lobbying interests throughout the nation, somehow didn't manage to get these same shipper commitments.
I can't comment to what the producers, why they liked one project and were not inclined to sign up for the other project. Perhaps it's the fact that our project gives them an ability to move barrels to Patoka and also to move barrels to the Gulf Coast.
Well, the stuff that I've read specifically stated that they were actually going to use your line from Patoka south. So I'm a little bit curious on why they canceled, and you guys see this as a feasible option. I mean, granted you've got apparently your 320,000 commitment, which is great for you, but I'm still kind of stumped on why Koch brothers, who I assume, based on the fact that they're rated 6th in the world for billionaires, didn't manage to get the same commitments that somebody who's rated 521st in the world in 2013 managed to do?
Again, you would have to address that question to the producers who signed up with us.
All right. Will that be available eventually publicly, or will that be kept private?
We'll write this down. I'll have to get back with you on that question. I don't know if that is public information or not. The terms of the contracts or not, I don't know if the ship producers are.
Yeah. I noticed that it did say that there would be confidentiality agreements in terms of the open season, but as you just mentioned, it might be public knowledge on who those companies were, but not the terms. So, continuing on. Page 11, you listed 40 permanent jobs, North Dakota 12 to 15 jobs. North Dakota's percentage of, I guess these jobs would be more associated with the pump stations, considering that there's 5 here as opposed to 1 at Patoka. I'm a little curious on this number, though. Are these new jobs created or just permanent jobs associated with the pipeline?
The FTEs would be new jobs being created because we don't have any current staffing in these areas. And so, yes, there'll be, the positions would be mechanics, pipeline operators. You have to have folks who would do the one-call investigations when somebody's doing construction activity in the vicinity of the pipeline.
Going on to page 12, routing analysis for pipeline facilities to parallel existing corridors as much as possible. Will this be shown within the environmental assessment or environmental impact statement that NEPA requires? The reason I'm asking this is that currently the natural gas pipeline sits on Cannonball Ranch, which is historically significant to the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and North Dakota in general. So I'm a little curious if you're following that route, how that's going to be addressed.
Yes, we did try and follow existing utility corridors where they existed. I don't know what distance we follow.
I'm not certain which pipeline you're referring to. Is it Northern Natural?
I think so, yeah.
We do follow it for a little bit in Morton County, just north of it.
All right. Also on the same page, currently conducting civil wetland, threatened, endangered species, and cultural resource surveys to identify sensitive areas to avoid. You heard from my boss, Washdawa Young, that we haven't been involved in identification efforts with the Army Corps throughout numerous projects throughout our ancestral territories. So I'm curious right now, what's the tribal participation on these projects? Because I know Emergent is the contracting company for you guys. I know that they're currently hiring archaeologists, but I'm also curious on where they are and where you guys are in terms of tribal participation on these projects.
That I'm going to have to get back with you. I don't know specifically. I know we have availed ourselves of all the available public information that the state has in trying to overlay that with our maps to have that shown as points to avoid. And then the actual physical guys on the ground walking, looking for any evidence of culturally significant sites. And I guess I'll ask, you mentioned a couple of spots when previous discussion, and do y'all have maps or anything that denotes such areas, or is that available in contacting someone with the tribe?
Generally not available, but you can talk to our office about our issues and concerns with your pipeline route. We do have traditional knowledge and oral history of a lot of these areas. In particular, as Washdawa had mentioned, some of the story that she had just conveyed in terms of the exact area where you're intending to cross. And that we don't give out publicly, but we will talk about it privately. So, the other subsequent question to that, you mentioned that people are surveying. What exactly is being surveyed? Is it just jurisdictional boundaries of the Army Corps, or are you guys surveying 100% of your pipeline route?
We're surveying the entire pipeline route. We're doing a centerline survey for the proposed route, and we're surveying property boundaries of all the landowners who property is crossed by the pipeline and adjacent property owners.
Okay, sorry, I'm just writing this down. How large is your right of way? 150 feet, 300 feet?
The permanent easement is planned to be 50 foot in width, and the construction easement will generally be 150 foot in width.
Additionally, do you have access to all of this land, or are you guys going to be doing eminent domain on any of it to get access? Has there been any resistance to your pipeline crossing individuals' lands?
Right now, we're in the process of getting the survey permissions and finalizing the route via the surveys that are performed. We have just started the process of talking to individual landowners about easements, and our plan, desire, and the way we're focused on doing these projects is to avoid the use of eminent domain.
Thank you. Going to your summary, 100% domestic produced crude to support 100% domestic consumption.
Yes.
I'm kind of shocked you guys put that in there, to be honest.
Why is that?
Because there's no way that it's going to be consumed strictly within the United States. You have no control over what your shippers do with that crude oil. And in fact, it's heading down south where it's got easy access for shipping to Europe, where the profits are generally greater. The United States exports more crude oil than any other place right now. So I'm a little confused.
That's not an accurate statement. Federal law prohibits the export of crude oil.
It's being refined down at the refineries down in...
Refined products can be exported. Crude oil cannot be.
But that's the intention, is you're shipping this to Pacoda for refineries in Pacoda, and at the refineries, it says that right in your announcement, it's being refined at the Gulf Coast and Pacoda, which generally means it's likely used for export. It's the same as saying Keystone XL isn't going to be exported, which we all know it is. So...
Currently, the U.S. imports, the United States imports about 7.5 million barrels of crude oil, and so any additional production we have out of the Bakken would tend to reduce the amount of crude oil that's imported into the U.S.
And yet, it's been producing since 2008 on the levels that it's been doing it at, and there's still been no reduction in terms of your imports in the United States. So I'm not going to get into an argument, but I'm kind of shocked that that's in there. So. Additionally, reduces truck and rail utilization, which increases overall safety to the public and environment. Rail use will continue unabated regardless of the number of pipelines that are created, because the number of barrels per day continues to increase. It's not going to see much of a deficit in terms of rail use just by one pipeline, or 3 pipelines for that matter. If it was, you'd see Warren Buffett investing more in pipelines as opposed to rail, which he continues to invest in. So.
I have a question. If there are resources that are identified on the route, what is the plan for possible reroutes or avoidance of those resources?
The line, we will reroute as necessary for threatened and endangered species and cultural resources. We work with the federal agencies. I don't know if that's the Corps or others in that regard, but work with the agencies on their databases, and we'll have the protocol in place with the contractor if they come across a cultural resource in their construction activity as to who they have to notify and what takes place that they don't continue to construct. So that'll be addressed in the contractor's contract.
Okay. The tribe is the only one in possession of the maps for Sioux County. And in our site files in our map room upstairs, we have records that stay here that are our site files. And so if there is an existing, let's say the village site that I referred to, it's existing and goes into Morton County, how will that be addressed as a potential impact, adverse impact to that resource?
Is it possible for someone to work with the tribe to be able to look at those maps with you?
Mergent, our point of contact at Mergent, Peggy Bowden, she put us in charge, put us in contact with one of the crew chiefs for the project or the environmental assessment. So he did call us, but that's a conversation that we need to talk more with our committee and tribal council about.
Okay, if you're willing to share the information that you have or some of the information that you have, we will take that information and utilize it in our routing process.
Okay, thank you. One more comment that I have is that the northern pipeline that crosses at Morton County, the Missouri there, that pipeline has been, I'm not sure the exact date that it was constructed. Do you guys know that? 1881?
1981.
1981. Okay. So the 92 amendments to the National Historic Preservation Act were passed in 1992, and that was before the tribes had the right to consult on the project. So I think it would be really important for you guys to have tribal participation or request to work with the tribes on that, because it was built before the tribes had a voice in the process.
And also that we ask that you consult. I'm talking. Also, we ask that you consult with Standing Rock, because we do have the expertise and we do have knowledge of where the sites are. There are tribes that claim they know what sites are, but because we're talking about the entire area that you're trying to take the pipeline through crosses our treaty boundaries and where we existed before anybody. And so we have significant sites and we know what they are, and we're always trying to educate people about the sites. So if we know exactly where your pipeline is, we could help you and identify what is there. But that's where we have to work together, and that's why I thank you guys for coming to this has never been done before, where XL Pipeline, they just routed it. They had no communication with tribes prior. There was no communication with, we have 7, we call Ochete Shakoi, the original tribes that were in this area. So by you coming and trying to understand what our concerns are, what our questions are, what laws apply, if the 1981 pipeline that crosses north of the Cannonball River, if the 1992 law was in place, we could have showed where there's a significant site to our ancestors, to us, and to future generations. We could have let them see what exists there, and it's still there today. Even though you can look on the map, you can look on GoogleMap.com satellite images where the pipeline crosses north of Cannonball, 1,500 feet or 2,500 feet. There's an existing. You can see where it's been dredged. You can see where the water goes under the river, and it's right beside an island that was important to us. So that's within that right of way. So it's really important that you communicate with Standing Rock right now. That's what we're asking. You're here, so any future plans on routes or anything, you should come to Standing Rock and not other tribes. That's our ask for you. But I want I had a couple councilmen that had their hands up to ask questions. I have Randy, Avis, and Phyllis. Are there any other council that have any comments or questions? Okay, I'll let Randy, Avis, then Phyllis. Randy's over there.
Good morning. First of all, I just want to say that you're talking about consultation. I mean, to me, when you have the stakes laid out, to me, I mean, it's not consultation because the plan's already done. And to me, that's really wrong. The other concerns I have is we talk about refineries and oil. A year ago in North Dakota, we're all native in North Dakota, people were paying $5.64 for propane up to $6.25. Where were the people that were pumping all this refinery oil out of here when people from North Dakota are having hard times? And a lot of times I oppose that to our senators And I said, what do we have a refinery? When I can go to Rapid City, South Dakota and get 24 cents cheaper gas, or go to Fargo and get, what is our refinery doing here for North Dakota? To me, there's only a few people that are getting rich off it, and surely ain't the people from North Dakota. So I just wanted to make those concerns because a lot of us live here and we have to pay that high propane cost. And a lot of times, I know we address it, so I just wanted to make that, put it on the record, because I mean, that's a lot of our people don't have that money to pay $5.64 or $6.25 for propane. That's a lot. That's a lot. So I just wanted you to take that back and tell all these billionaires. I mean, these are lives that are north of Cannonball. That's a lot of our family that they're gonna. But I just want to make that matter of record, Chairman. So.
Thanks, Randy. Go ahead, Avis. Avis.
Phyllis.
No, I have Randy, Avis, and then Phyllis.
Oh, I thought Phyllis was before me, but thank you. I guess I'm like the chairman. I thank you for coming. But some of the things that I was concerned with is the participation of our THPO. I think they really have to participate in the monitoring of those sites, cultural sites. You said they're out there walking the ground now, and that's been a standard, I guess a sore spot with the states of North Dakota and South Dakota is that they really don't have a lot of that information about cultural sites within our reservation. We have that, I guess, historical knowledge here on the reservation that they have. A lot of it, some of it, I should say, is not written down. So it really is going to take some tribal participation. You ain't going to get a map with it marked out. And a lot of it's in our oral histories. And the knowledge is kept there in the Tribal Historic Preservation Office. So there's got to be a way for this tribe to participate, because you're going to miss something. And then I understand, I wanted to let you know that yesterday the Standing Rock Tribal Water Control Board passed a motion to oppose those two pipelines. Actually, it's going to be by resolution. And the reason being is that we do monitoring of our waters here on a reservation. We test them and everything. And we have intakes in the Missouri River. And we utilize that water for consumption on this reservation. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a major concern for us, is the contamination of the water. They all leak, no matter what. Every oil pipeline leaks, and we're going to end up contaminating our water. And one of the uses is beneficial use. I think Phyllis is going to highlight some of that, because she really keyed into it for us here on Tribal Council. One of the uses we have is beneficial use, and that means that we consume the water. We're really worried about it being contaminated for us here now that use it now and our future generations. It's a great fear that we have. They all leak, no matter what. It's going to happen, and it's going to ruin that water that we consume and that future generations are going to consume. So they passed the Water Control Board, and it'll come before this council, and we'll probably be coming forth with a resolution opposing it.
And the tribal council already has a
previous resolutions
resolution
with
2005.
previous pipelines. I guess that's what I wanted to stress there, that we have superior winter induction rights on all the waterways in our Aboriginal territories, and we do use the water, so that would be our biggest fear, is that it's going to be contaminated. So that's all I wanted to mention, is what the action the Water Control Board took yesterday.
Okay, thanks, Avis. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, we have a quorum. 15 Statute 635 is ratified by the Congress of the United States. As a council member of this tribe, I am I am bound by my oath of office to uphold that statute. Article 11 says anything that comes through Indian country has to have an assessment and damages. In this case, it's subjective assessment. This tribe has adopted a social impact assessment, which is a methodology that is not recognized by the United States. It does no such measurement of the damages to communities at that level. The United States almost did it when Exxon Valdez happened to the Tlingit village in Alaska. They almost adopted a methodology. It didn't happen. So we adopted our own. It's called the SIA. It is a methodology that every person, company, and the United States is bound to recognize. And that's the impacts. You know, we have survived incredible odds. You must know that we are Sitting Bull's people. You must know who we are. And we sit on a previous military fort. And we have survived that. And we have rebuilt on what was taken from us. We survived Wounded Knee, a massacre. We are survivors. We are fighters. And we are protectors of our land. And if that social impact assessment can protect this homeland for 7 generations, then perhaps we could look at a proposal from any company. But we realize we are in a national sacrifice area. We have always been. The Black Hills are part of our territory. National sacrifice so America could take the largest gold mine and take all the gold from our people. We have about $5 billion in the treasury that we did not take for payment of that gold. We are national sacrifice area. We were the #1 military zone. They nationalized our airspace to protect this country. And in my lifetime, a national sacrifice area to build the dams so that there could be hydropower and revenue in the national interest for this country. And taking my home, flooding it in the middle of a cold winter. I know what it is to be homeless. I know what it is to be hungry in this great land of plenty, where we are lived in the richest riverbed in the world. So it's nothing for you to come and say, we want to do this. We want to be friends with you. But Section 106, what the National Historic Preservation Office has addressed, is ancestral territory. It was very astute for you to go around the northern boundary of Standing Rock as we see it in modern times. This is treated territory. Those are ancestral lands. 50 yards, 100 miles north is treaty territory. So you are bound by Section 106, by the laws of this country, to adhere to those laws that are federal laws for the protection of our people. So it wasn't very, very cool to go just 50 feet north of our boundary. So you need to know also that there's been a $5 million claim filed on the Bakken. $5 million a day for what's going on in the Bakken in treaty territory. That's been filed in 2007. So we are not stupid people. We are not ignorant people. Do not underestimate the people of Standing Rock. We know what's going on, and we know what belongs to us, and we know what we have to keep for our children and our grandchildren. In 15 Statute 635, we are also keepers of the Missouri River to the east bank. To the east bank. That's statutory. And the Army Corps of Engineers, in all of their underhandedness and their control they think they have of this river, is our territory. You mentioned nothing about the water. You don't want to infringe on native lands, but our water is our single last property that we have for our people. And water is life. Miniwi choni. You as a human being cannot drink oil. You need the water to survive. 75% of our body is water. We believe in the natural systems that we have. We have fought for that. We have sacrificed for it. And we're still waiting for the compensation for the building of the dams. We are still owed on the construction of those dams $339 million. That's probably a drop in the bucket for your oil company. We're still owed for the actual revenue that comes off of it. We are owners of 13% of the hydropower on that river. How do you separate it? How are you going to separate the oil from the water when it's contaminated? How are you going to do that? Only the Creator can do that. Maybe in your high technology, you think you can. But this is our property. This is our homeland. And we are protected by statute. There is statutory law that has to be changed. And let you know that we did go on record to sue Keystone XL pipeline to stop it. And we are going before the Public Utilities Commission in South Dakota because they have to redo their licensing process. And we will do whatever we have to do to stop this pipeline, as we do 55 other pipelines proposed in North Dakota. Dakota, North Dakota, Mia Ma Dakota, I'm Dakota. Dakota means friend and ally. This was Dakota territory. This is treaty territory. This is where you agreed not to come into my territory. We signed a treaty of peace that you would not come here. The state of North Dakota and South Dakota, they filed an enabling act to join the Union of the United States, that they would not interfere in the affairs of the people who lived here. And that was upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States in 1964. So we have put on our best. We will put our best warriors in the front. We are the vanguard. We are Hunkpapa Lakota. That means the horn of the buffalo. That's who we are. We are the protectors of our nation, of Ochete Shakoi. The 7 council fires know who we are. We will put forward our young people, our young lawyers, who understand the weasel words now of the English language, who know that one word can mean 7 things. We understand the forked tongue that our grandfathers talked about. We know about talking about both sides of your mouth, smiling with one side of your face. We know all the tricks of the Washichu world. Our young people have mastered it. I have mastered your language. I can speak eloquently in the English language my grandmother taught me. But I also know the genetic psyche. And I also have the collective memory of the damages that have occurred to my people. And I will never submit to any pipeline to go through my homeland. Mitakease.
Go ahead, Ron.
One comment that I want to say is 2,500 feet is too close. There's a refinery in Mandan, so why can't you bring your pipeline to there, work with those people, bring it down through Bismarck, cross the river, whatever, follow that interstate highway system. I mean, it's there, you know. That's my comment.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, then we're gonna move on. We're gonna take a break, and I just want to thank you for coming down and sharing the information with us. Like I said, it's never been said before, and with our position, we know that we can live without oil. We know that we can live without money, but we can't live without water. So we're always doing what we can to protect that, and also to protect our culture sites.
Well, we thank you for having us. If there's any time that you or other members of council would want to have any description of, you know, some of the monitoring safety programs that we have in place to ensure that we operate the pipeline safely and that there are not leaks from the pipeline, we'd be glad to share that information with you.
Okay, thank you. No, we'll recess until 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Okay.